Are you married to a particular way of eating? Is your diet supporting you right now? Are you identifying with a particular like vegan or vegetarian or carnivorism or whatever it is? How is that supporting your health? Well, today we are going to be speaking with my favorite expert, world-renowned best-selling author, teacher, and supporter of the Lillian McDermott radio show Classroom, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, about how the different kinds of diets, how do they compare to becoming a nutritarian?
And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
Hi, my name is Lily McDermott, and I am a certified life coach and the host of the Lillian McDermott radio show Classroom. If this is your first time tuning in, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. And it is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal. And it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Well, just recently, Dr. Joel Fuhrman was our keynote speaker at the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit. To say that people went crazy is not even giving it justice. He is an amazing speaker, an amazing supporter of the classroom, and I am just so glad that we get to speak to him today because it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, and I'm grateful that Dr. Joel Fuhrman is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Fuhrman, to the classroom.
Thank you. Great to be here as always.
Yes. Well, I must add, one of the reasons why the crowd went wild is that at the end, you showed us your abs and your muscles, and everybody was just so like, they were shocked. They were shocked. And at the same time, they were like, oh my gosh, you mean I can look like that? And so it's a motivator. It's a motivator. It's nice to speak to someone who lives what they say they live. So good on you. Good on you, Dr. Fuhrman. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being the keynote speaker. So let's talk about, I identify with eating nutritiously. That's my identification. And when I learned about the nutritarian lifestyle diet, we use these terminologies that kind of put us in a pigeonhole, so to speak. But there are these titles for diets like keto and all these different things that may or may not support our entire body. So let's talk about nutritarian and how it compares with the different kind of diets or fad diets that are out there today, and how can we make these tweaks so that we can go towards more of a nutritarian lifestyle.
Right. And that's what I've seen that is most effective for people who want to stay motivated to eat super healthfully. And I call healthy eating a nutritarian diet. And I want people to have that identity of being a nutritarian. I want them to be able to say, I'm a nutritarian, because it's people who change their identity and identify with being a healthy eater and being a representative of a person who eats so healthfully are people who stay with eating long term. So that's the goal, is to feel you're a nutritarian, that you're desirous of never having a heart attack, never having a stroke, not getting demented, and protecting yourself against cancer, and pushing the envelope of human longevity with a healthy place span, health span, and lifespan, so we can live to reach our natural lifespan around 100 years old. So we're saying the bell curve should be between 95 and 105 years old for most people, not the 75 to 80 that we see in America today. So now, and then we have diets of all description. And I'm using certain criteria, the studies that are available, and I've reviewed, as people may be aware, more than 30,000 studies on nutritional science to extract, let's say, the 2,000 references I used in my book, Eat for Life. I didn't just pick out 2,000 references. I had to review 30,000 references to pick out the 2,000 best, or the 2,000 that are most applicable. But of course, in looking at the 30,000 references, you see that most diets have some weaknesses that shorten human lifespan. and we're shortening human lifespan from the goal of 100 years. So we've had the standard American diet is shortening lifespan to about 78 years. That's 22 years of shortened lifespan from following the standard American diet. Now, if I score the standard American diet as a 0, then you have certain diets that have a negative number. Their health span, lifespan number are worse because you shorten lifespan, even compared to the unhealthy way of eating Americans eat. So the health span would be like when your health starts to deteriorate and you get medical problems, and that's the health span for Americans is about 66, and their lifespan's about 78. So 66, 78 is the health span, lifespan numbers. Now, we have a lot of data on long-term people following keto diets and carnivore diets. A lot of data now. We have more than 10 different studies going on 25 years of people following these diets to see if they have shortened lifespans. And generally, the emphasis of staying in ketosis means you're restricting carbohydrates to 30% or less, or carnivore, which is even worse, has been shown to reduce lifespan by more than 5 years on the average. So we're talking about -5 from the standard American diet, which is already pretty bad. I say the standard American diet's been designed by Al-Qaeda to kill us. That's my joke, because obviously it's we have epidemic of these ridiculous deaths, and people are living 25 years less than the average human should live. So of course I'm giving carnivore about a -10 and keto about a -5, and the standard American diet is 0. Now, because we know that the most powerful evidence to control human lifespan has to do with regulation of protein. And we see that in all these studies tracking human lifespan, as animal protein scores go up, people live shorter lifespans. So animal protein becomes a primary regulator of lifespan, meaning more animal protein shorten lifespans. And in the highest percentages of animal protein, then you have the shortest lifespans, and thus the negative numbers. Now, that said, these same studies show that plant protein intake is the major regulator of longevity. More plant protein leads to longer lifespan. And there's 5 categories of plant foods, and only one is low in protein, and that's fruit. The other 4 categories are pretty rich, protein rich. So we're talking here about vegetables, beans, legumes, intact whole grains, and nuts and seeds. Those 4 categories are rich in protein. So as you eat more, vegetables, whole grains, as you eat more plant protein foods, obviously we live longer. And animal protein becomes somewhat of a measurement, a measurement for seeing how much protein is in, how much animal product is in your diet, because animal products do not have any phytochemicals or antioxidants. And our phytochemical or antioxidants is what enables us for the immune system to stay strong as we age and prevent cancer and prevent inflammation in the body. So we're talking about measuring how we measure lifespan in a diet. We look at nutrients. We look at phytochemicals. We look at, all the nutrients, of course. We look at the omega-3 index, which has to be favorable, not too high, not too low, and not too high. And animal protein particularly drives these risk factors like high IGF-1, which is a hormone that promotes cancer and promotes cellular growth. High TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, from eating more dairy products and eating more egg whites and eating more animal protein. And the BMAA, these toxins that cause Parkinson's and dementia that are found in seafood and seaweed. And so we look at the toxic load of the body. We look at the inflammatory load. We look at the LDL cholesterol, the things that we look at saturated fat intake. We look at salt intake. We look at all these factors that modulate longevity. And of course, the key factor that modulates longevity is having a diet that's rich in micronutrients, particularly the plant-derived micronutrients, the phytochemicals and antioxidants, without taking in excess calories. So we look at the caloric load of the diet as well, and how satisfied the person is with the caloric load. And with an assortment of those 5 foods with enough variety and intake of fiber, the fiber and the resistant starch creates a favorable microbiome that then makes us more satisfied with the right amount of calories. It's the fiber that makes the short-chain fatty acids. and grows the bacteria that form the short-chain fatty acids. And the short-chain fatty acids naturally control the appetite, not only through the GLP-1 receptors, but also through the appestat and the hypothalamus, because butyrate is the major short-chain fatty acid from bacterial degradation that makes you feel like you had enough calories in the brain. So in other words, we have to be slim, not overeat, yet get a huge assortment of calories. So now we're moving from, we absolutely know we have to produce longevity. We have to restrict animal products, and we have to eat more colorful plants. Then we have the Mediterranean diet, which is better than the American diet, but because it contains a lot of extra oils and other lifespan shortening elements in the Mediterranean diet, it only is an average of 3 years longer than the average American diet. It's hailed as the greatest diet because so many people follow it, but I don't know what it is anyway, because there's all different types of Mediterranean diets. But as a whole, because oil is so pro-inflammatory, especially when you cook with it a lot, and because they're still utilizing things that, like cheeses and pizzas and white bread, they're still using a lot of lifespan shortening ingredients. They only get 3 years longer compared to the American diet. Added tomato sauce, added vegetables, there's added nuts. A lot of things make it better than the American diet, but not that much better. And then you have the type of low-fat vegan diets, right? And the low-fat vegan diets might be people, for some reason, they think that the diet is better if they don't eat nuts and seeds. And it pushes the diet too low in fat, because we have too much evidence today to show that nuts and seeds extend human lifespan. Nuts and seeds, and contrary to the myth that have been promoted by a lot of plant-based and vegan gurus, the myth is that eating nuts and seeds is going to make you gain weight. It's not going to be good for your heart, and it may not even be favorable for your diabetes or your glucose. And those are incorrect and been disproven by a huge amount of studies that show if we modulate calories in an isocaloric fashion. Isocaloric means I compare a 1,700 calorie diet to a 1,700 calorie diet, not comparing a 1,700 calorie diet to 2,000 calorie diet. Of course, if we eat more calories and you gain weight, you're going to have things go wrong. But if your diets are the same amount of calories, both at 2,000 calories, let's say, and we take out some carbohydrate food like rice, potato, or some kind of, or whole wheat bread, and we put in the same amount of calories from nuts and seeds, which are higher in fat, we find the diet shows more weight loss, more satiety, more diabetic control, and more protection against cardiovascular death, and more stabilization of the heart against an irregular heartbeat or arrhythmia. So now we're saying that the extremely low-fat vegans that are afraid of eating nuts and seeds because of the fat content is a diet better than the American diet. They're gaining about 5 or 6 years of lifespan. Compared to a blue zone diet, which gets about 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 years of added lifespan with these blue zone diets, because they're not so restricted in fat. Even fat restricted diets, even adding a little olive oil to a fat restricted diet shows some benefit, because you need fat to absorb the phytochemicals and carotenoids in plant foods to get maximum benefit from it. And the ALA in walnuts and flax seeds and chia seeds and hemp seeds has the most protection against cardiac arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation or sudden cardiac death. And you get that from eating nuts and seeds too. And so even though olive oil might show some advantage over no fat, it still doesn't have nearly the advantage of eating a nut or seed compared to olive oil, right? Because it's so now we're moving from a low-fat vegan diet, which maybe has 8 years of extended lifespan, to a blue zone diet with 10 years of extended lifespan, to the Seventh-day Adventist, flexitarian, pescatarian diets, so people eating mostly plant food with a little bit of fish. And those diets were in the past have gotten maybe more than 10 years of life, like, in the top 10 or 12 years of life. But moving to a nutritarian diet where you're supplying the optimal sources of omega-3 fatty acids, then we're getting to the 15 to 18 years of extended lifespan. And so much so that with the supplemented nutritarian, where we're targeting the omega-3 index and adjusting the supplement of omega-3 fatty acid to get that most optimal targeted omega-3 index between 5 and 5.5 and 8 in conjunction with this healthy plant-based diet, with the avoidance of fish. there's some advantage to not relying on fish for our omega-3 fatty acids. The advantage is not just the reduction of animal protein, which is because if you eat a little bit of fish, it's not going to be that major factor to determining lifespan anyway, if that's the only protein you ate. But the major factor is the dumping of plastics in the waterways with unprecedented proportions, tons of dumps, thousands of tons every hour. So microplastics have invaded the coastal waterways, and agricultural runoff through its nitrogen wastes have invaded the lakes and the coastal waterways. So we have a tremendous amount of cyanobacteria being fueled, the growth of cyanobacteria. Now, these plastics and the BMA, these toxins settle to the bottom of the ocean, and they're highest in bivalves like clams, oysters, shellfish, and mussels and oysters, and those are and shellfish, of course, like lobster and crab, which have 30 to 50 times as much BMA as larger ocean fish that might be higher in mercury. So the smaller fish are higher in plastic, the bivalves are higher in BMA, and the larger fish are higher in toxic metals. So
Wow.
the inclusion of fish in your seafood in the diet, as opposed to taking the beneficial nutrients we get from fish, which is zinc and omega-3 fatty acids, get them in a cleaner source, like my vegan EPA DHA.
Mm-hmm.
Right, these refrigerated bottles, the refrigerated of vegan sourced EPA DHA for people not eating fish. And it's refrigerated because oils have a tendency to go rancid over time at room temperature over the years of months and months. So, but modulating that dose to taking the right amount to be in that optimal level is a major factor, because we're seeing a lot of studies today showing that the omega-3 index is linked to lifespan. And lower levels, you lose 5 years of life if your levels are below 3, compared to people that are above 6. So we're talking about not just shrinkage of the brain. We're saying that brain size in later life can be correlate with the omega-3 index, but it's not just brain size, it's also other problems. But it's also a problem if you take too much. So you want to be in that sweet spot with any nutrient. You want to be in that normal range, not too high and not too low.
And
so
what is the normal range, Dr. Fuhrman? What is that normal range?
I'm saying the optimal range we want people is between 5.5 and 8 on the omega-3 index test. Okay. And they can take the standard dose of my DHA liquid, and then after they're taking it for 4 months, do the omega-3 index test and see if they're right in that normal range. Right. They can stay there if they're in the normal range. If they're not in the normal range, it could take a little more. If they're popping out of the normal range, it could take a little less. And some people may not need to take any. Mm-hmm. There's some people who just convert a lot, that make a lot on their own because they're genetically favored in that way. So there's we find a big genetic variance from person to person in their ability to convert the ALA, the short chain omega-3 from walnuts and flax seeds and green vegetables, into the long chain omega-3, EPA and DHA. But the conversion is obviously very small number of percent. Mm-hmm. And the majority of people, talking about 80% of people, have unfavorable omega-3 index unless they regularly eat fish, regularly eat seafood. So this Nutritarian, conservatively, judiciously, intelligently supplemented, we're able to push the envelope of human longevity to the health span of 97 and the lifespan of 100 years old. So we're seeing that ability, and I'm coming to these figures from my review of the science, but also from my own clinical experience working with 20,000 patients over the last 35, 40 years, seeing people that have come to me with serious illnesses, and seeing when they're in their, when they're older already, in their 70s even, and seeing how long they lived when they made such a radical change in the way they're eating, how well they've done and how long they're able to live has been shocking to me.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Dr. Fuhrman. I wanted to go back to some of I love how you explain the different kinds of diets. Like the carnivore all the way to the nutritarian. I want to go back to the low-fat vegan, because we know that is a way how people identify as vegan. Some people identify as vegan because they want to protect the animals and they don't feel that you should ever kill an animal. And then there's the people that feel that this is the best way to eat. Now, I have seen vegans that they are just they're eating a lot of processed foods. They're eating potato chips and they're eating Oreos and lots of sugar. So can we address that's not the kind of vegan that is extending the lifestyle for the lifespan of 5 years, that there is in every single category, even in Mediterranean and all these, there's a high intake of sugar and a high intake of, maybe white flour. Can you kind of work with how do you determine, as a person who is identifying as a vegan, being kind to animals and all of that, the dangers of that particular marriage of a vegan that is not a healthy vegan?
Well, I think that's very important you brought up that point, because we should definitely need to address it. Because my claims and my estimates of how long people live on various diets is assuming the person ate all healthy vegan food.
Mhm.
And they ate whole food plant-based diets and modulated the nut intake to make it a low-fat vegan. I was not considering the idea that a person would be living on white flour and crackers and soft drinks and because let's put this out there clearly, is that white flour is a sugar equivalent to the body. The body doesn't see white flour enters the bloodstream as glucose, the same as if you had eating sugar from a sugar bowl, the same way, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
And it's not a food, it's a drug. And it's very powerfully shortens human lifespan. And the reason why analysis of diets on meat and chicken hadn't shown reduction of lifespan is because when people were eating less meat, they ate more chicken. And when they ate less chicken, they ate more white bread, or they ate more pasta, or they ate more white rice. They ate more white foods that were processed carbohydrates, which did not have any beneficial longevity promoting effects compared to the chicken or the meat.
Mhm.
So it was only when scientists went to start studying the protein, because obviously we're looking at whole plant foods that have the protein, not oil.
Mhm.
And so oil and white flour are empty calories. The oil gives us no fiber and nutrients and no protein.
Mhm.
So if you took the 300 calories of nuts and seeds out of the diet and put in 300 calories of oil instead, you would have just taken 15 grams of protein out of your diet. You follow me? So your diet's going to be low in protein now, because your fat comes from a zero protein source. And if you take, so in other words, Americans get their fat consumption from animal fats and oils. So any study looking at oil consumption in America isn't studying nuts and seeds. They're studying oil and animal fats. So it falsely gives the appearance in these studies that any degree of fat added to the diet is increasing risk of heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and breast cancer, and cancer. So it says, so then a person looking at these studies can say, don't eat any fat, don't eat any nuts and seeds, or you're going to be increasing risk of breast cancer, because the studies show that right down to almost zero, as your fat content goes lower, breast cancer goes down. As the fat content goes higher, breast cancer goes up. But that study is misleading, because they're looking at the fat content from what Americans are consuming. They're looking at oils and animal fats, not nuts and seeds. When we then look at populations that eat nuts and seeds as a source of fat, we find that more nuts and seeds means more fat in the diet, means lower rates of breast cancer and lower rates of heart disease, because the fat comes from nuts and seeds, not from oil or animal fats. The same thing with sugar. If the sugar came from fruit and not from figs and peaches and not from white flour and sugar, it would be a different outcome. So it's where the sugar came from, where the fat came from, where the protein came from. So all these people advocating different diets use studies to distort reality, because they don't use studies that show they show one type of carbohydrate or one type of fat. So getting back to this idea of using nuts and seeds as a source of fat, when you eat oil as a source of fat, the calories come into the bloodstream instantaneously. We're talking about 40 to 50 calories a minute. So when 50 calories of oil fat come into your bloodstream, the body can't burn that for energy. It only burns 1 calorie a minute for energy. So then it has to be stored as fat. The fat stored as fat then binds to the insulin receptors and binds to your cell membranes and makes you insulin resistant and creates diabetes and drives up insulin as a fat storage hormone, which then releases these cancer promotion properties. But when you take in fats from nuts and seeds, the calories from the bloodstream so slowly, like at 1 calorie a minute, not 50 calories a minute. So the body can preferentially use it for energy, burning it for fat. And fat that you burn for energy doesn't have any negative effect. It's only fat that you store on the body that has a negative effect. It's not eating fat if you burned it for energy. It's only eating fat if you didn't burn it for energy. So the nuts and seeds supply nutrients that suck out oxidized LDL it facilitate the absorption, because a salad and vegetables eaten without a fat source, you're not absorbing like 1/50th the amount of phytochemicals and antioxidants compared to eating some walnuts or almonds with that meal or in the dressing. So now the nuts and seeds enabled us to absorb all these beneficial, stabilizing, anti-inflammatory, longevity-promoting nutrients without increasing fat storage on the cellular membranes or creating more insulin resistance. So it's a completely different animal. Walnut oil is not a walnut, and sesame oil is not a sesame seed. They're completely different once you separate the fat from the original food it came in. The same thing if you separate the sugar from the apple, or the sugar from the, right? You ate the apple, but what if we just make apple sugar? Or what if we take the rate, so the same thing is you eat sugar. Well, if you eat the original fruit, it's not the same dangers and harm as if you had it extracted.
Yeah.
And so people are very confused about nutrition, including the researchers and the people who are teaching nutrition. Almost everybody gives some wrong advice. You have people on the internet telling people to eat, use like ghee and clarified butter to fry your eggs because it's going to be less, because the saturation of the fat means it's more stable to when you cook it at heat, it's not going to cause rancid compounds, blah, 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 and eat all the eggs you want because cholesterol doesn't raise cholesterol as much as eating saturated fat raises cholesterol. You have all these people giving, and it's just, you get bad information everywhere you look.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to these people in these conferences talk about, all these they're just giving such incorrect information when we have such a overwhelming amount of corroborative evidence. In other words, the corroborative evidence on nuts and seeds is so overwhelming, meaning there's not just 1 or 2 studies. There's 50 studies showing that eating nuts and seeds as your source of fat makes you live dramatically longer lifespans. Dramatically longer lifespans, a 40% reduction of cardiovascular deaths, not from a nutritarian diet, just from a diet that includes nuts and seeds. Forget about the rest of the stuff you should be eating on a nutritarian diet. So we have such an unprecedented opportunity in human history to use this recent plethora of evidence coming out to support our diet styles, to enable us to protect against heart attacks, strokes, cancers, and dementia. We have the real formula how to do this. And now people just have to do it. But they don't do it is the problem. We have the evidence. We have the proof. We have the corroborative evidence from multiple studies of different researchers around the world. We're talking about thousands of researchers around the world doing projects on thousands of people. And then they all show the same outcomes. The same outcomes are, these are the people that live the longest, and these are the people that live the shortest. Even the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2 target down to the exact number of nuts and seeds lead to the longest lifespan. How many you eat? They show that eating like a quarter of an ounce a day to a half an ounce a day to 3/4 of an ounce to an ounce to an ounce and a half, and how long people are living based on how much they're eating. We've got so much data today to be able to design the optimal diet for people. And then the question is, why aren't people doing it? They get all these mixed messages. They give up, they throw in the towel, but mostly because they're food addicts and they use food to recreate with to shorten their lifespan.
Well, there's also a lot of misinformation in social media. I remember the question that my son asked you about not being able to eat beans because of the lectins. I think that's and you said you've got the wrong information. You're listening to the wrong information. So that tends
that guy who advocates that spends more than 10 million a month on social advertising, because he spends 10 million a month because he makes probably 50 million a month on selling his supplements. He spends a huge amount of money to advocate incorrect nutritional information.
Yeah.
He's all over the place. Anytime you put on go on the web on some internet site, and he's all over, popping up as an ad, about how bad lectins are or something. It's amazing.
Yeah. I remember last name, Dr. Khan. I think I can't remember his first name right now.
Joel Khan?
Joel, yeah, of course, Joel. And he used to come on the show quite a bit before he became really, really busy. And he said, this is what I think about this book. And so there was a trash can with the book in his book in the trash can, and he took a picture and he published it. He says, he's the guy we're talking about is a cardiologist that has been spending all this money, and so a lot of people are believing in the name. And I had not that I want to gossip about this, but there was a friend of his that told me that he got like $10 million to start this to sell this marketing, and he was paid to be the face of it. And so and it's sad because a lot of people are they don't have the luxury to have you come into the classroom and to learn some of these new truths. But I do want to ask you, and I have to ask because I just interviewed a young man named Pablo Kelly, Dr. Fuhrman, and he was diagnosed at the age, I think he was in his 20s, with stage 4 glioblastoma. And he was told that if he didn't do chemotherapy, he would die within, that his lifespan was at 6 months to live. And if he did the chemotherapy, the lifespan wasn't that incredible after that. So he chose to not do chemo or radiation, and he chose nutrition to reduce the tumors of his brain. He started doing research. The research that he did led him to a keto diet. And I've had Dr. Thomas Seyfried in the classroom, and it originally started with the epilepsy, and it was controlling epilepsy. Now, when you're talking about certain cancers, certain brain conditions, is that an exception to have chemo? Now, this guy, Pablo Kelly, has survived 10 years.
Wow.
10 years. And I mean, I had the privilege to interview him, and then I did some research and I found that there's another guy, and I don't know anything about this other guy, what he's done, but we've reached out to him because we want to interview him as well. But he's been living it with stage 4 glioblastoma for 20 years. And I'm assuming he did not opt for chemotherapy and radiation. So are there exceptions to the rule when somebody has a cancer specifically targeting the brain?
Exactly. So that's an excellent question. And I've had patients with glioblastoma that I tried to put on vegan keto diets or vegan heavy keto diets. We fed them avocado and lettuces and coconut and things like that, and nuts, because ketosis. So there are some conditions that even if you're doing a carnivore diet or a keto or an animal-based keto diet may help you in those conditions, but it's still going to shorten your lifespan. But the condition if you lived, you're not going to, it's still going to prevent you from living a really long life. You're not going to live to be 100. But in those cases, it's okay to die to not get the full lifespan benefit because the condition you're suffering with is so severe. And let's go through the 3 or 4 conditions where that might be appropriate.
Okay, that's great.
One is a seizure disorder that's uncontrollable with medications. That's the first one, right? So because we know that giving people keto diets helps with seizures, especially, but the problem is that the diet has some negative effects as far as longevity, so we'd rather not give it. The second is what you're saying is for brain tumors. Brain tumors are very sensitive to the acid ketosis for the body is not good for aging of the body, but it does interfere with the ability of brain cells to replicate. So it might for brain, like glioblastoma is a perfect example. The third indication is people with schizophrenia or psychosis, schizophrenics or people with severe mental illness, that the being in ketosis and being on diets that restrict can sometimes help. We're talking about a huge impact because we're talking about over 40% of people with psychosis can get normal brains again when they stay in ketosis, which means that they won't need the antipsychotic drugs, which are dangerous in themselves, which cause obesity and shorten lifespan. So most likely, the 5 years of shortening from the average keto diet is less lifespan shortening than the years shortening from the antipsychotic medications that you'd have to be on if you were on a keto diet.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
So there are some indications, and if I was psychotic and had a schizophrenia, I would try that, to see if I could control it without having to go on medications. Certainly I would do that kind of a diet. And so we experiment with those type of diets with certain conditions, and we make the diet more plant keto in those cases, which means we still feed them green vegetables and nuts and coconut. We just don't give much of the other high carbohydrate plant foods, except for maybe some wild blueberries and blackberries in small amounts. So they get some of those phytochemicals. So then we modulate the keto so it's not all carnivore, but even that could be somewhat adjusted if the person is psychotic.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to discuss that, because I was I was conflicted, honestly, when I was, and I've known of this, but I didn't know if it was an exception or is it that one size does not fit all. We know that. And
Yeah.
so if somebody, let's say somebody has an allergic reaction to a particular food, like for example, I can't have peas. I break out when I have peas. I'm wondering, can could there be an exception to some of these rules? And by the way, we didn't talk about
But by the
paleo.
way, rheumatoid arthritis too. I mean, I have 85% of my rheumatoid arthritis patients make complete recovery with plant-based nutrition. 85%.
Wow.
There's some RA patients that are so sensitive to plant antigens that you almost have to get them off all plant foods. And we do that with fasting and elimination diets, finding what plant foods can they eat, not reacting to. And some of these people just say, oh, I'm going on a carnivore diet, not eating any plants, and I feel better. So there's a small percentage of people with RA that feel better when they go strictly carnivore. But I don't recommend that because I usually can find plant foods they can eat and I can adjust the diet and over time get them eating a more wider diet and still keep the rheumatoid arthritis away. And 85% of cases don't need to go to that extreme of a diet to get rid of this plant antigen stimulant. It doesn't mean I'm like totally against the person who's feeling better from because they are eating that way if they can't survive on the eating so allergically sensitive with their, but I'd rather heal the gut, fix the leaky gut, get their immune system strong, get rid of the rheumatoid arthritis, and not have to keep them on those radical diets that shorten lifespan. But there are some, people who feel better. So we can't deny the fact that they have some therapeutic indications, but not broad indications, unusual and rare indications relatively.
Yeah. And it's so important that we listen to our body and the symptoms that we're experiencing because, not everybody can tolerate certain foods. I was just talking to a friend yesterday that she says her daughter eats a very pristine diet, but she can't lose weight. She's overweight. And she just did some testing to find out what she was allergic to. I don't know if it's a blood test or it's a blood test or a gut test. I don't know what test she did, but she discovered she's allergic to all lettuce. I had never heard that ever in my life.
That is such bull and such nonsense. Even if she was allergic to lettuce, eating lettuce wouldn't make her not lose weight. This is ridiculous stuff you're hearing. Number one, don't forget Americans are eating double the calories the human body needs. The average caloric consumption in America is 3,300 calories a day. Women need the average caloric intake worldwide in primitive populations is about 1,500 calories a day, less than half of what Americans eat. Now, there's a wide range of caloric intake, and some people don't lose weight on 1,400 calories a day. They need to eat 1,300. They don't lose weight on 1,300. They need to eat 1,100. And the healthier your caloric load, your nutrient load is, the more you instinctually feel comfortable with the amount of calories that's going to cause you to be thinner or lose weight. If you can't be comfortable with that amount of calories, it's usually you're eating the wrong foods because you're eating foods that are, too calorically concentrated and not healthy enough diet. I can guarantee you this young woman is not losing weight because she's allergic to some lettuce or other foods. She's not losing weight because she's eating unhealthy foods and she's eating too much calories. If she was, I've taken care of, tens of thousands of people. We put them on a healthy diet and we modulate their caloric intake and we find the exact amount of calories that causes them to lose 2 pounds a week. And they stay with that long term. And there's who doesn't lose weight? If they don't lose weight on 1,350 calories, we go to 1,300 calories. We get the exact number of calories where they start to lose weight. It's not that the allergies don't make them not lose weight. Now, the only thing is that the microbiome, an unhealthy microbiome, could not be producing the bacterial products that make you feel satisfied. So helping the microbiome build up faster could help with the people remove their craving for extra calories. So there's some additional input there that sometimes can be helpful. But other than eating the right foods, and when you're eating mushrooms and onions and berries and, all these foods are naturally low in calories, zucchini and artichokes and spaghetti squash, you're eating good, wholesome, robust servings of food that make you feel satisfied. So it's having people feel satisfied from the nutrient, from the fiber, and from the volume and weight of what they're eating. They're eating enough food, so they don't want to eat more food, and they're comfortable eating the right amount of calories for them. And these test allergies are usually bogus. They're not accurate. Not RAS testing and IgE testing and skin testing is accurate.
Okay.
But these other tests that they do where they give them like 500 or 100 foods on a piece of paper and they show all these things that are, because you can only do like 8 tests with a RAS test on 1 tube of blood. You can't do like 100 tests. These tests are just too inaccurate. But if people have a true skin test or a true RAS test that's very still very active, they have to avoid that food if they're very allergic to it. Throat clothing, itching, you get really strong symptoms, but that's still not the cause of them why they can't lose weight.
Yeah. What about inflammation? Does a food that you eat that you're allergic to create inflammation in the body, which could lead to weight gain, or not
No.
that much? Okay.
No, it's not going to, no,
Good. Good.
not going to cause weight gain. You can't, it doesn't, because don't forget, it's still how many calories you're consuming based on your own metabolism. And we want the metabolism to be slower, not faster. We want the person to be able to eat less calories and not get too thin. Because throughout human history, people could survive on less food and not have to starve to death and still maintain adequate size. So we want the body to develop efficiency, digestive efficiency. And so it's inflammation it reduces that efficiency. It doesn't increase efficiency. In other words, not losing weight on less calories is a beneficial thing, a favorable thing. Not a harmful thing. It's people don't get it, So inflammation makes anyway.
And that's why you're so passionate about it. And that's why since 2015, Dr. Fuhrman has been in the classroom, because he wakes us up to the myths that we've been taught. And we can't just trust everything we see on YouTube. There was a time, I would say, that you could look at YouTube and go, oh, wow, this is something I need to consider and research. People now, they just hear one thing and run off with it. I don't know how many people that have told me that they're drinking urine, that they heard that drinking your own urine is going to be good. I'm thinking, whoever invented that must be laughing their way to the bank.
You get every kind of nonsense you drink, and people now think celery is the superfood. But in any case,
So
good luck.
So I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please become a subscriber for the classroom. While you're there, please subscribe to my social media. This is where I tell you, don't believe anything we say. Please research it, because I try to avoid all of this white coat trance. I hear and obey, but it's the same thing. The YouTube trance, the Facebook trance. We need to take this information and go, let me research it. PubMed is a great place to do some research and kind of compare and contrast what you're learning. But, when you come here to the classroom, this is a place where I discern and I bring wonderful teachers to the classroom. So I hope that you will start from here and work your way to research and acceptance to what works for you. While you're there, please check out my sponsors. Support our sponsors the way that they're supporting the classroom. We have the Shop Now bag that is just a wonderful place to discover some of the Lilly approved products. Some of them are affiliates and others are not. They're just there because I absolutely appreciate who they are and what they represent in the world. Last but not least, you can become an enrolled student in the classroom. So whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month or a one-time donation, all of it helps with all the extra expenses from all the different censoring that they have done in the classroom. It's very important that you continue taking that pill, because that pill lines the pocket of the pharmaceutical industry. And so what I'm telling you here, and what Dr. Fuhrman and I have discussed in the past, is if you didn't have that pill, how would your life be different? That pill is like a pass, like a hallway pass, that you can eat whatever you want. And that was the conversation I was having yesterday with my friend. And what you need to understand is that if you make the choice when you purchase your food, when you sit down and make the food, when you make that choice, then you don't need that pill as much. Maybe temporarily to get you through a crisis, but not for the rest of your life. And so if you can donate anything that you can donate to the classroom, whether it's your time, your talent, your treasure, just sharing this video alone and putting emojis and making comments, that is a great way to help the classroom grow. Today we have Dr. Joe Fuhrman in the classroom. You can find him at drfuhrman.com, and you can find him in, I believe he's in one of my sponsors' pictures. You can just click and it takes you straight to his website. Or if you have the blog, you can just click on his name and it takes you straight to his website and the products and services that he offers as well. Dr. Fuhrman, it is amazing to me that we have this information. And there's a scripture verse, it's Hosea 4:6, that says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And they stop right there. The rest of the quote of the scripture says, it wasn't that they didn't have the knowledge, they rejected the knowledge. And you just said a little while ago, we know this information, but yet people choose other things we see people now taking Ozempic. We see people trying to take shortcuts. What do you say to someone who wants to release weight and wants to take a shortcut?
Well, it doesn't usually work long term. We're saying here is that, I have a retreat in San Diego where people
Yes,
come
you
and
do.
stay with me for months.
Yes.
People have to learn a lot to be able to keep weight off and keep it off forever and learn how to love living this way. And they have to learn a lot of information. So some people can do it on their own with books and videos, and my website and stuff helps them. But for other people, they come here and they say they couldn't do it on their own. The fact that there was so much learning they had to do. And the learning was not just about nutritional science. The learning was about personal growth and building robust emotional health to be able to deal with living differently and being a leader and not a follower in this world. So, but with the right, what you were saying just now, with the right education and information, we could train them to be more joyous, more passionate, more peaceful, more wanting to be not self-destructive and give their life more meaning and feel that they're impacting the world in such a positive way that building their own health becomes an important part of their achievement. And they start to succeed and they lose their addictions and self-destructive habits and toying around with foods they know are shortening their lifespan. And so I think that it's a detailed educational process that when people undergo this process, they have great outcomes. You can't get all that learning from taking a pill. You don't get all those changes you need to do from taking a pill. And it just doesn't work. It works short term, like you were saying, but they gain the weight back, they yo-yo.
And it's worse. And it's worse. You always say that when they gain the weight back, it's worse for you because it's visceral fat, right?
Yes, it's worse than they started from. It's really, we're talking at the very beginning of this show, changing your identity so you can say, I am a Nutritarian, and being proud of that.
Yeah, because we're focusing on nutrients, micronutrients, macronutrients.
But people wouldn't be comfortable saying that because they're not Nutritarians. They don't feel comfortable with doing that. They haven't identified with that. But we train them to be proud of that and to feel that they gives them the power now to have positive effects on other people. They can have creative goodwill for others when they're a better role model themselves. And, so yeah, it's a complicated question, a complicated answer, but we feel we're doing good work in enabling people to change their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Fuhrman, earlier you talked about reduced caloric intake and you mentioned something about time and intermittent fasting. Let's talk about that's another way that people are reducing caloric intake is they're doing intermittent fasting. Can you share a little bit about how that can be done effectively, or if it's something that shouldn't be done at all?
Yes, because if you cut your calories back too low, remember I was saying cut back to 1,400 or 1,350 or something, but if you're starting 500 calories a day or 800 calories a day, most people who are food addicts, it makes them obsess about food more and want to binge and go to swing the other way. So for a lot of people, the type of intermittent fasting, when they go for these days or weeks of cutting their calories back too much or fasting, it doesn't work for them because it makes them more obsessing about food and wanting to binge. So it's not, but and also the recent studies in intermittent fasting shows that it's not beneficial to skip breakfast and eat later in the day. It's actually not good for your lifespan to skip breakfast and eat later in the day. That intermittent fasting only works.
What?
Yes, if you're going to eat a low caloric window by eating lunch and dinner and skipping breakfast to eating like an 8 hour window, it's not lifespan favorable. It's actually lifespan unfavorable.
Ooh, okay. So what is the best? So maybe stop eating earlier in the day
Yeah, the
and
only type of intermittent fasting that's been shown to be lifespan enhancing is be that when you eat breakfast and lunch or and a smaller dinner or an earlier dinner or you skip dinner, not when you skip breakfast. So if you want to eat 2 meals a day, then eat at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock, or but don't eat 12 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock and 6 o'clock. In other words, we're saying intermittent fasting, yes, but it has to be very carefully done. We can eat 2 meals a day. We can eat 2 meals and a snack. We can eat 3 meals a day, but we don't want to go to bed on a heavy stomach. We want to eat light at night before we go to bed, or eat an earlier and lighter dinner. And that's the type of intermittent fasting that's most effective at extending lifespan. So yes, it can be, people can do better with intermittent fasting if they cut their calories back by either skipping dinners or eating just a snack at dinner time. That can work.
And I know that you talk about eating a soup at night. That would be a great time to have that kind of a meal. I know that Robert and I have a salad every day, and that's part of the principles of a Nutritarian diet. So can you share a little bit about the principles of eating a Nutritarian lifestyle, a diet, so that people that aren't identifying with being a Nutritarian might feel, oh, this is doable.
Yeah, well, what we do here is we serve a salad with a delicious dressing made with nuts and seeds, not oil, with onion and kale or arugula or lettuces, and tomatoes and sliced, and we serve a nice big salad for lunch. And then we have usually vegetable or bean soup. And we put in the soup either fresh mushrooms or dried mushrooms. I love these dried forest mushrooms that we dump into the soup too. It's like chewy and it's just incredibly delicious. So we make delicious soups. So we usually have salad, soup, and a little fruit for lunch, which is people really like. And that's the key meal of a Nutritarian diet. It gets the salad in there. It gets your mushrooms into it. You have some beans in the soup, Breakfast can be something like oats, berries, flax seeds, plant milk, you know what I mean? Or a piece of Ezekiel bread or something. So, and then dinner, like you were saying, we want to make lighter. We usually make a cooked vegetable dish, a vegetable roll, a wrap, a wok Thai curry sauce dish, or, and then a little small dessert marks the end of eating for the day. So in other words, we have that little frozen ice cream, frozen cherries, frozen, some kind of healthy dessert like a baked apple or something. But the small dessert says, okay, I'm going to have this dessert now at 5:30 at night. And I'm going to clean my teeth. I'll floss and water pick, and I'm going to clean the kitchen. And now I'm going to recreate the rest of the night with things that don't involve food or drink. The only thing that passes your lips would be water. So we shouldn't allow calories in our mouth after 5:30, after 6 o'clock at night, so that little dessert helps people make a clear demarcation to the end of caloric consumption for the day. And there's no calories consumed at night. That's your recreational period. And you learn how to recreate without food. Millions of ways we can recreate and have fun without putting food in our mouth.
We do have an unhealthy relationship with food. And I did a 5-day water fast with Dr. Michael Clapper. And I never was hungry. I was never hungry. And I remember I could hear your voice saying, hunger is experienced in the throat. And when I did that, it really made me think. It was almost a spiritual experience for me, because it allowed my body to do the processing of food, of whatever it needed to process at that time, because it wasn't being wasted and processing food. But it was
when we do water fasting, we go into ketosis, and the ketosis removes hunger. That's the way the keto diet works too, because people are in ketosis and they can't feel hunger in the keto when the body's producing ketones. But in any case, it's intermittently or occasionally a healthy person could do that. But we find that when a food addicted, obese person does that, that it usually leads to them yo-yoing the weight and not resulting in permanent sustaining of the lighter weight. And they just gain the weight back and more. So we're even careful with the use of with the recommendation for a water fast when people that are overweight, because too much, it triggers their obsessions. Well, when they go back to eating again, they wind up eating too much food and gaining all the weight back, and the regain of weight is unfavorable. So they lost weight while fasting, but they gained it back again. Did them no good at all. So that we're finding the majority of people that utilize fasting as a tool when they're overweight, it does not work for. People have to learn to follow a way of eating that they're going to follow consistently for the rest of their life. It's going to work for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so once again, G-bombs, greens, beans, mushrooms, onions, berries, and seeds, nuts and seeds. But the beans and the mushrooms, those are the ones that you say should be cooked.
Correct.
Yes.
Beans should be cooked or sprouted. Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, so when you sprout them, they don't, that's good as well.
Yes, if you can sprout lentils, and mung beans are the best to sprout. But I want people to sprout broccoli, radish, onion, kale, lentils, mung beans are all super, super healthy when you sprout them. And so I want that to be, if you can, make that a part of your diet too.
Well, Dr. Fuhrman, you always bring something new to me. As many times as we've had a conversation and done classes together, every time I learn something new. And I'm hoping that someone along the way, can any of you that are watching and listening, can you relate to wanting to end the cycle of learning misinformation about food? I truly believe that a Nutritarian lifestyle just brings all of it together and helps bless our body the way we want it to be blessed. And so thank you, Dr. Fuhrman, for what you do to be out there and with the passion that you do. And I hope that your detox weight loss detox program went beautifully. We promoted that as well for you. And we know that it is a choice. We can make a choice. And the sooner we make this choice, the better we will feel longer in our life. Because I've seen, and you and I have discussed that many people actually live with a disease for such a long time, but it's not a quality life. The life of a Nutritarian, I really truly believe, is the way that we'll end up prolonging our life so that we can live as long as we can without the medications and as joyous as we want. So thank you for everything that you do for that.
Thank you. You too. Well, you do. All right.
Thank
well,
you.
good luck, everybody.
Thank you. And we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Joel Fuhrman wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Thank you, Dr. Fuhrman.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking